In this video I want to talk to you about procurement of contractors. Now, a procurement strategy identifies the best way of achieving the objectives of the project and also value for money. Now, a procurement route delivers the procurement strategy. What we're looking for is a design, construction, operation and maintenance, and that all of this is considered as a whole, with the delivery team working together as an integrated project team. There are various alternative methods of procurement available to represent and reflect the differences that we have in allocation of risk and responsibility. And indicatively, there is relative benefits and disadvantages for each. We might consider these to be the traditional route, design and build, management contracting, or construction management. Now, each method has its own variations. No method is best in all circumstances. However, it is normal on a restaurant project for it to be procured on a traditional basis, although this might be supplemented on the basis of some element of performance specification, as we spoke about before, which allows a contractor to provide some elements of design, e.g. on services, installations and the like. Now, matters affecting our procurement strategy could include the nature of the refurbishment, the scope of the works, measure of control by the client, accountability, how the contractor is to be appointed, the certainty of the final cost, the start and completion times, any restrictions, changes during the construction and how they're dealt with, and the building relationship with the supply chain. Now, consequences of this choice of main contract will dictate how the composition of the design team and project team is put together, the compatibility of agreements, documents for tendering purposes and how they're defined in detail in terms of design and responsibilities, and how the contract sum is calculated. Let's now consider traditional procurement. Within traditional procurement, the contractor builds a client design scope of works within a time period for a lump sum. The client remains responsible for the design and the performance of the consultants under his demise. This method has become standard practice in the building industry for the last 150 years or more. The design process is separate from construction and a full documentation is required before the contractor can be invited to tender for carrying out the works. This is, of course, in theory. Now, the appointment of the contractor is commonly by competitive tender and less usually by negotiation, although we undertake both in terms of our works within the restaurant sector. Full documentation should be provided for tendering purposes, including that for specialist subcontractors, and adequate time is needed for the preparation of this. The client has overall control over the design, specifies the quality and the standards, and through appointed consultants, the design is developed for the main contractor to implement. Now, because design and construction are separate sequential processes, this traditional form of construction can take longer than other forms of construction. However, there is for the client a reasonable certainty on construction cost, and the contract figures are known at the outset, although this may need to be adjusted if there are any variations and changes. The terms of the traditional contract require the client to appoint a professional consultant to act as his independent contract administrator. We will talk about this more later. Although making design decisions before the work has commenced may bring about a measure of inflexibility, there is options for changes or variations possible, and this can be related back and assessed in terms of cost and extra time if required on a contract. Administrative matters relating to the valuation and payments are in the hands of the client's consultants, which is a job that we do on their behalf for them. Completion within the contract period is an obligation, and any effort that can be revised as and when we add more and additional work to the contract if appropriate, or outside of the actual implementation of the contract original terms. Now, there's a speculative level of risk, but this is balanced between the parties, more in the client's favour on a lump sum contract, but less so with measurement contracts. In terms of the traditional contract, there are various forms that we could go along, but generally we'd be working on a JCT contract in this country for our restaurant work, most normally the intermediate form. Points of note in the choice of any procurement route are that although the establishment of a certain financial outcome at an early stage in the development programme will minimise client risk, it could well be at a price. This is because of the risks which the tenderers have to assume, i.e. in design and build. The fixation of the contract sum at a stage allows for the contractor to actually price his element of risk. This he might price at a premium, which means that the client is actually paying an amount of money on top of that which he might have done if it had been handled under the traditional route. The traditional procurement approach allows for progressive development of the client brief, which may be helpful where there is uncertainty or greater complexity, which contrasts with design and build, which needs a definitive statement produced early on to become the basis for the contract activities. There is little flexibility to accommodate variations and changes under a design and build approach, and a standard documentation for contract for each approach with which the industry is familiar allows agreements to be entered into readily. I hope this section on contract choices has helped you. I have much further information that I can provide to you. If you would like to email me, contact me through my website or contact me via LinkedIn. We'd be delighted to help you choose your contractual route.